Douglas Holmes steps off the interstellar transport, his human form an immediate oddity among the sea of bioluminescent, Edosian bodies. The alien diplomat's skin pulses with vibrant colors, a stark contrast to Douglas's plain, unchanging flesh. As he scans the welcoming committee, his gaze locks onto Juno, the Edosian liaison assigned to him. Her luminous patterns shift rapidly, betraying her intense curiosity about the first human to set foot on their world. "Welcome to Osia, xenobiologist Holmes," Juno greets him, her translator converting her melodic tones into crisp English. "I hope you'll find our world as fascinating as we find you." Douglas nods, acutely aware of the growing crowd of Edosians gathering to catch a glimpse of the alien visitor. He follows Juno through the spaceport, noting the advanced technology seamlessly integrated into the organic architecture. The cultural exchange program suddenly feels far more daunting than he'd anticipated. In his assigned quarters, Douglas begins to unpack, grateful for a moment of privacy. The door slides open unexpectedly, and Juno enters, her eyes widening in shock as she catches sight of Douglas in a state of undress. Her gaze fixates on his exposed genitals, a biological feature entirely foreign to Edosian anatomy. Juno's startled exclamation echoes through the building. "By the cosmic winds, what is that?" Douglas scrambles to cover himself, but the damage is done. Juno's reaction draws the attention of nearby Edosians, who crowd the doorway, their skin flashing in patterns of alarm and fascination. News of the human's unique anatomy spreads like wildfire through the Edosian scientific community. Within hours, the Edosian High Council convenes an emergency meeting to discuss the implications of this discovery. Debates rage over whether humans pose a potential threat due to their drastically different biology. Meanwhile, Douglas finds himself at the center of intense scrutiny. He struggles to maintain his composure as he's subjected to constant questions and invasive medical examinations. The situation escalates when a group of radical Edosian supremacists demands Douglas's immediate quarantine and deportation, claiming that human biology could contaminate their species. Juno, torn between her diplomatic duties and her own conflicting feelings of curiosity and attraction, realizes she must protect Douglas from the growing hostility. She watches as the Edosian government issues a statement declaring humans a species of interest, effectively placing Douglas under constant surveillance. Isolated and overwhelmed, Douglas contacts Earth's embassy, urgently requesting guidance on how to handle the delicate diplomatic situation without compromising humanity's standing in the galactic community. As he waits for a response, he finds himself trapped in a foreign world, his body the subject of intense alien fascination and fear. With tensions rising and his mission in jeopardy, Douglas turns to Juno, his only potential ally in navigating the complex cultural and biological minefield he now faces. As night falls on Edosia, the bioluminescent glow of the planet's inhabitants serves as a constant reminder of the vast differences between their species, differences that now threaten to spark an interstellar incident. As dawn broke over the bioluminescent landscape of Osia, Douglas Holmes found himself pacing in his quarters, the events of the previous day weighing heavily on his mind. The constant glow from outside served as a stark reminder of the vast differences between his species and the Edosians, differences that had now thrust him into the center of a diplomatic maelstrom. A sharp knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Juno entered, her skin pulsing with a mix of blue and green hues that Douglas had come to associate with anxiety and concern. "Xenobiologist Holmes," she began, her translator struggling to convey the nuances of her tonal language. "I regret to inform you that the High Council has reached a decision regarding your status." Douglas's heart sank as Juno explained the council's verdict. He was to be placed under house arrest for further study. The room suddenly felt smaller, more confining. "I understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What happens now?" "I've been assigned as your personal guard and liaison," Juno replied, her skin shifting to a softer shade of blue. "We'll work together to navigate this situation." Over the next few days, Douglas found himself subjected to a battery of tests and examinations. Edosian scientists probed and scanned every inch of his body, their fascination with his anatomy evident in the rapid flashing of their bioluminescent patterns. During a brief respite from the examinations, Douglas's scientific curiosity got the better of him. He began asking Juno about Idosian biology, particularly their reproductive processes. Her explanation left him astounded. Our reproduction occurs through a complex bioluminescent ritual, Juno explained, her skin pulsing with subtle patterns as she spoke. It involves the synchronization of our electromagnetic fields and intricate light displays. This revelation sparked an idea in Douglas's mind. He turned to Juno, his eyes bright with excitement. What if we proposed a mutual exchange of biological information? It could be a gesture of goodwill, a way to bridge the gap between our species. Juno's skin flashed with a mix of surprise and intrigue. She relayed the proposal to the High Council, who, after hours of heated debate, reluctantly agreed. The next day, Douglas found himself face-to-face with Dr. Zara, the lead Idosian xenobiologist. Her elongated form towered over him, her skin rippling with patterns that conveyed both scientific curiosity and thinly veiled suspicion. "Shall we begin?" Dr. Zara asked, her translator barely keeping up with the rapid changes in her tonal speech. For hours, Douglas watched in fascination as Dr. Zara demonstrated the intricacies of Idosian mating. The room filled with pulsating light patterns and electromagnetic waves that made the hair on his arms stand on end. Despite his scientific background, Douglas struggled to comprehend how this process could be compatible with human biology. When it came time for Douglas to share information about human reproduction, he hesitated. The potential consequences of revealing such intimate details caused great concern on him. Yet he knew this exchange might be the key to improving human-Idosian relations. As Douglas began his explanation, he noticed Juno's skin flickering with rapid patterns he hadn't seen before. Her usually stoic demeanor seemed to waver, her large eyes fixed intently on him. Suddenly, a loud crackling sound filled the room. Sparks erupted from one of the monitoring devices, causing a power surge that rippled through the laboratory. The lights flickered, and a wave of electromagnetic energy washed over them. In the chaos that followed, Douglas noticed a dramatic change in Juno. Her skin erupted in a dazzling display of colors, pulsating with an intensity that made him shield his eyes. She let out a cry that his translator couldn't interpret, her body trembling. Dr. Zara's reaction was immediate. "Evacuate! Now!" she shouted, her skin flashing urgent patterns. As the other Idosians rushed out, Dr. Zara turned to Douglas, her expression grave. "Juno's mating cycle has been triggered prematurely. This is unprecedented and potentially dangerous." Before Douglas could respond, Dr. Zara was gone, leaving him alone with the affected Juno. Her normally composed demeanor had vanished, replaced by a creature driven by instincts Douglas could barely comprehend. Juno reached out to him, her skin pulsing with patterns that seemed to pull at something deep within him. Douglas felt a strange resonance, as if his own bioelectric field was responding to hers. "Douglas," Juno's voice crackled through the translator, distorted by her condition. "I don't understand what's happening to me. Please, help." Drawing on his xenobiology expertise, Douglas realized the gravity of the situation. If Juno's mating cycle wasn't properly addressed, it could have severe physiological consequences. Yet any intervention on his part could be seen as a further contamination, potentially destroying any progress made in human-Idosian relations. As Douglas grappled with this dilemma, he could hear a commotion outside. The news of the incident was spreading rapidly, and he could only imagine the reaction of the Idosian populace, especially the radical supremacist group. Time was running out. Douglas had to make a decision. The fate of Juno, his mission, and possibly the future of human-Idosian relations hung in the balance. His next actions would have consequences that would ripple across the stars. With a deep breath, Douglas stepped towards Juno, his mind racing to find a solution that would save her life without compromising everything he had worked for. The room pulsed with the intense glow of Juno's bioluminescence, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance with anticipation of what was to come. Douglas stepped towards Juno, his mind racing to find a solution that would save her without compromising his mission. Drawing upon his xenobiology expertise, he quickly assessed the situation, recognizing the delicate balance between helping Juno and maintaining diplomatic relations. "Juno, I'm going to try to stabilize your condition," Douglas said, his voice calm despite the urgency of the moment. "I need you to trust me and remain as still as possible." Juno nodded, her skin pulsating with an intense rhythm that made Douglas's eyes water. He moved to the room's environmental controls, carefully adjusting the electromagnetic field to counteract the effects of the power surge. As he worked, Douglas felt a strange tingling sensation course through his body. The room's atmosphere seemed to thicken, charged with an almost palpable energy. Juno's bioluminescent patterns began to shift, their chaotic flashing gradually settling into a more stable rhythm. Suddenly, the door slid open, and Dr. Zara burst in, followed by a team of Edosian medical specialists. Their elongated forms crowded the room, eyes wide as they observed Douglas's actions. "Fascinating," Dr. Zara murmured, her translator barely keeping up with her rapid speech. "He's modulating the electromagnetic field to stabilize her patterns. Quickly, record everything." The medical team sprang into action, setting up monitoring equipment and furiously taking notes. Douglas, focused intently on his task, barely registered their presence. As Juno's condition began to stabilize, Douglas felt an unexpected change within himself. His skin prickled, and he became acutely aware of a strange resonance between his body and the electromagnetic fields permeating the room. He looked down at his arms, startled to see his veins glowing faintly beneath his skin. Dr. Zara's gasp broke his concentration. "Impossible!" she exclaimed, her skin flashing with patterns of shock and excitement. "The human is responding to the Edosian mating frequencies." Douglas stumbled back, overwhelmed by the sensations coursing through his body. He steadied himself against a nearby console, his pupils dilating with the implications of what was happening. "Dr. Holmes?" Juno's voice, now clearer, cut through the commotion. "What's happening to you?" Before Douglas could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. General Kraz's voice boomed over the intercom system. "Attention, all personnel. Implement heightened security protocols immediately. The research facility is now under lockdown." Dr. Zara turned to her team, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "We need to report this to the High Council immediately. This changes everything we thought we knew about interspecies compatibility." Outside, the sound of angry voices grew louder. Douglas moved to the window, peering out to see a large crowd gathering. At its center stood a tall, imposing Edosian, his skin flashing with patterns that seemed to whip the crowd into a frenzy. "That's Vex," Juno said, joining Douglas at the window. "Leader of the Edosian supremacist group. He's been vocal about his opposition to human presence on Edosia." Douglas watched as Vex raised his arms, his voice carrying even through the thick walls of the facility. "Deport the human now. Protect the purity of our species." The crowd's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in unison, a dazzling display of xenophobic fervor. But as Douglas scanned the scene, he noticed a smaller group forming at the edges of the protest. Their patterns were different, more varied, and they carried signs with unfamiliar symbols. "The interstellar cooperatives," Juno explained, noticing Douglas's questioning look. "They support continued cooperation with humans. It seems the incident has already sparked a planet-wide debate." Dr. Zara approached them, her skin now a calmer shade of blue. "The High Council is convening an emergency session to address the situation. In the meantime, Dr. Holmes, we need to run more tests. Your unexpected response to Edosian mating frequencies could be the key to groundbreaking discoveries." Douglas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just a scientist, but an unwitting ambassador, his very biology now at the center of a potential interstellar incident. "I need to contact Earth's embassy," Douglas said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding him. "They need to be informed of these developments." Dr. Zara nodded, gesturing to one of her assistants. "We'll set up a secure communication channel for you. But first, we must begin our analysis. Time is of the essence." As Douglas followed Dr. Zara to the examination area, he caught Juno's eye. The Edosian liaison's skin flickered with a pattern he hadn't seen before, conveying an emotion his translator couldn't quite capture. In that moment, Douglas realized that whatever happened next would irrevocably change not just his mission, but the future of human-Adosian relations. The facility hummed with nervous energy as Douglas prepared himself for the battery of tests to come. Outside, the opposing factions continued to grow, their bioluminescent displays turning the Adosian night into a riot of color and conflict. The stage was set for a diplomatic and scientific drama that would resonate across the stars. The facility hummed with nervous energy as Douglas prepared himself for the battery of tests to come. Outside, the opposing factions continued to grow, their bioluminescent displays turning the Adosian night into a riot of color and conflict. The stage was set for a diplomatic and scientific drama that would resonate across the stars. As Douglas followed Dr. Zara to the examination area, he felt a strange tingling sensation coursing through his body. The air around him seemed charged with an unseen energy, making the hair on his arms stand on end. He glanced at Juno, noticing her skin pulsating with an intensity he had never seen before. "We'll start with a series of baseline scans," Dr. Zara announced, her skin flickering with patterns of scientific excitement. "We need to understand the full extent of the energy signature we observed during your interaction with Juno." Douglas nodded, lying down on the examination table. As the Adosian medical team bustled around him, attaching sensors and calibrating equipment, he couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The test began, and Douglas felt waves of energy washing over him. His body tingled, and he watched in fascination as his veins began to glow faintly beneath his skin. Across the room, Juno underwent similar examinations, her bioluminescent patterns shifting and pulsing in response to the energy surges. "Remarkable," Dr. Zara murmured, her eyes flicking between the monitoring screens and her two subjects. "The energy signature is becoming stronger and more stable with each test. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies compatibility." As the experiments progressed, Douglas noticed the facility's power systems responding to the energy fluctuations. Lights flickered and equipment hummed with increased intensity. The Adosian scientists worked feverishly, recording data and adjusting parameters. Suddenly, during a particularly intense session, alarms blared throughout the facility. The energy signature unexpectedly amplified, causing a massive surge that overwhelmed the safety systems. Sparks flew from control panels, and the room plunged into darkness. "Emergency protocols!" Dr. Zara shouted, her skin flashing urgent patterns. "Evacuate immediately!" In the chaos that ensued, Douglas found himself being pushed towards a nearby chamber. He reached out, grabbing Juno's arm as they stumbled through the doorway together. The heavy door slid shut behind them with a resounding thud, sealing them inside. As the emergency lights flickered on, Douglas realized they were trapped in an isolated containment chamber. The room was small, barely large enough for the two of them, with smooth, featureless walls designed to withstand intense energy fluctuations. "Are you all right?" Douglas asked Juno, his voice echoing in the confined space. Juno nodded, her skin pulsing with a mix of concern and something else Douglas couldn't quite identify. "Yes, but I fear we're cut off from the others. This chamber is designed to contain energy surges. It also blocks all communication." As they waited for rescue, Douglas became acutely aware of Juno's proximity. The lingering effects of the energy signature seemed to intensify, creating an almost palpable connection between them. He felt his heart rate increase, and his skin tingled wherever it came close to Juno's. "Douglas," Juno whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "something's happening to us. I can feel changes." He nodded, unable to deny the strange sensations coursing through his body. Their eyes met, and Douglas felt a surge of attraction so powerful it took his breath away. He struggled to maintain his composure, knowing the importance of their professional relationship. Outside the chamber, the facility descended into chaos. Dr. Zara and her team worked frantically to restore power and rescue their trapped subjects. As they battled technical malfunctions and system failures, word of the incident began to spread. Vex, the Adosian supremacist leader, seized upon the news. He rallied his supporters, organizing a massive protest outside the research facility. The streets filled with angry Adosians, their skin flashing with patterns of fear and hatred. "Deport the human now," Vex's voice boomed over the crowd. End this dangerous experiment before it destroys our way of life. General Kraz, faced with the growing unrest, implemented a full lockdown of the area. Edosian military forces poured into the streets, creating a protective perimeter around the facility. The general's skin pulsed with patterns of perseverance as he addressed his troops. "Maintain order at all costs," he commanded. "We cannot allow extremists to jeopardize this critical research." Inside the isolated chamber, Douglas and Juno's prolonged exposure to the energy signature began to take its toll. Douglas noticed subtle changes in his physiology. His skin seemed to develop a faint luminescence, and he felt more attuned to the electromagnetic fields around him. Juno, too, was changing. Her bioluminescent patterns became more complex, shifting in ways that seemed to resonate with Douglas's own bioelectric field. They found themselves drawn closer together, their bodies reacting to each other in unprecedented ways. As Dr. Zara's team finally managed to bypass the chamber's security systems, they were met with a sight that would change the course of human-Edosian relations forever. Douglas and Juno stood in the center of the room, their bodies enveloped in a shimmering field of energy that pulsed in perfect synchronization. Dr. Zara's skin flashed with patterns of awe and excitement. "By the cosmic currents," she breathed, "we've witnessed the birth of something entirely new." The facility hummed with renewed energy as the implications of this discovery began to sink in. Outside, the protests continued to grow, unaware of the groundbreaking event that had just occurred within the research center's walls. As Douglas and Juno were led from the chamber, still surrounded by the pulsing energy field, they knew their lives and the future of human-Edosian relations would never be the same. The stage was set for a scientific and cultural revolution that would ripple across the stars, challenging everything both species thought they knew about themselves and each other. As the energy field surrounding Douglas and Juno pulsed with renewed intensity, the rescue team finally breached the isolated chamber. The heavy door slid open with a hiss, revealing a sight that left even the seasoned Edosian scientists speechless. Dr. Zara's skin flashed with patterns of shock and wonder as she took in the transformed appearance of her subjects. Douglas's once human skin now shimmered with a faint bioluminescence, while Juno's Edosian features had subtly shifted, taking on a more human-like quality. "Incredible," Dr. Zara breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "The energy signature has altered their physiology at a fundamental level." As the researchers swarmed around them, Douglas and Juno exchanged a look of bewilderment and concern. The connection between them felt stronger than ever, their newly altered bodies resonating with a shared energy. "What's happening to us?" Douglas asked, his voice trembling slightly as he examined his glowing skin. Dr. Zara approached them cautiously, her skin pulsing with patterns of scientific excitement. "It appears that prolonged exposure to the energy signature has triggered unprecedented physiological changes in both of you. We need to run immediate tests to understand the full extent of these transformations." As the medical team rushed to set up equipment, General Kraz burst into the room, his skin flashing with urgent patterns. "Dr. Zara, report!" he demanded, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of Douglas and Juno. "General, we've witnessed something extraordinary," Dr. Zara explained, her skin flickering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "The human and Edosian physiologies have merged in ways we never thought possible. The implications are staggering." General Kraz's expression hardened as he processed the information. "This facility is now under strict quarantine," he declared, his voice leaving no room for argument. "No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. We cannot risk any potential spread of this transformation." As the general barked orders into his communication device, Douglas and Juno were ushered into a sterile examination room. A team of Edosian medical specialists, their skin pulsing with patterns of intense concentration, began a battery of tests. Douglas winced as a sharp needle pierced his skin, drawing a sample of his altered blood. "Fascinating," one of the specialists murmured, examining the luminescent fluid. "The cellular structure shows a perfect fusion of human and Edosian characteristics." Across the room, Juno underwent similar examinations. Her skin flickered with patterns of discomfort and unease as the medical team probed and scanned her body. The changes extend beyond the surface, another specialist reported. Her internal organs show signs of adaptation to human physiology. As the test continued, news of the incident spread like wildfire through the facility and beyond. Outside, the crowd of protesters grew larger and more agitated. Vex's voice boomed over the chaos, his words stoking the flames of xenophobic fear. "The human plague has infected one of our own," he shouted, his skin flashing with patterns of rage and disgust. "We must put an end to this abomination before it's too late." Inside the quarantine zone, Douglas and Juno sat side by side in a small observation room, still reeling from the battery of tests they had endured. Douglas reached out hesitantly, his glowing fingers intertwining with Juno's. The touch sent a jolt of energy through both of them, their newly altered bodies responding in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. "Juno," Douglas said softly, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and trepidation. "I can feel everything. It's like I'm connected to the electromagnetic fields around us." Juno nodded, her skin pulsing with patterns of shared understanding. "And I feel more attuned to the subtle nuances of your expressions, your emotions. It's overwhelming." Their moment of connection was interrupted as Dr. Zara entered the room, her skin flickering with patterns of excitement and concern. "We've made some preliminary findings," she announced, her voice tight with nearly unleashed enthusiasm. "Your DNA has undergone significant alterations, resulting in a hybrid physiology that combines traits from both species. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before." As Dr. Zara launched into a detailed explanation of their findings, a commotion outside caught their attention. Through the observation window, they could see a human woman engaged in a heated discussion with General Kraz. "That's Ambassador Sarah Chen," Juno explained, recognizing the human diplomat. "She must have just arrived from Earth." The argument between the ambassador and the general continued for several tense minutes before they seemed to reach a compromise. Moments later, a large screen in the observation room flickered to life, revealing Ambassador Chen's face. "Dr. Holmes," she began, her expression a mix of concern and diplomatic poise, "I've been briefed on the situation. Can you please explain, in your own words, what has happened?" As Douglas recounted the events that led to their transformation, Ambassador Chen listened intently, her brow furrowing with each new detail. When he finished, she took a deep breath, visibly processing the implications. "This is unprecedented," she said finally. "I'll need to report back to Earth immediately. In the meantime, Dr. Holmes, please cooperate fully with the Adosian research team. Your condition could have far-reaching consequences for human-Adosian relations." As the screen went dark, Douglas and Juno exchanged a look of apprehension. They were no longer just scientists or diplomats. They had become living embodiments of a new frontier in interspecies relations, their very existence challenging everything both humans and Adosians thought they knew about their place in the universe. Outside, the protests continued to grow, the angry voices of Vex's followers mixing with the more measured tones of the interstellar cooperatives. Inside the quarantine zone, teams of scientists worked feverishly to unravel the mysteries of Douglas and Juno's transformation. As night fell on the Adosian world, the research facility hummed with nervous energy. Douglas and Juno, their bodies still adjusting to their new hybrid state, faced an uncertain future. They had become the focal point of a scientific revolution and a political firestorm, their transformed bodies holding the key to unprecedented advancements and unforeseen dangers. The stage was set for a crisis that would test the limits of interspecies cooperation, scientific ethics, and the very definition of what it meant to be human or Adosian. As Douglas drifted into an uneasy sleep, his newly luminescent skin pulsing gently, he couldn't help but wonder what challenges the coming days would bring. As Douglas drifted into an uneasy sleep, his newly luminescent skin pulsing gently, he couldn't help but wonder what challenges the coming days would bring. The next morning, Douglas and Juno were summoned to a meeting with Dr. Zara, General Kraz, and Ambassador Chen. The tension in the room was palpable as they entered, their altered bodies drawing curious glances from the assembled officials. Ambassador Chen cleared her throat, her expression a mix of diplomacy and barely suppressed excitement. "We've reached a decision," she announced. the High Council has approved a joint human-Adosian research initiative to study the effects of what we're calling xenoharmonin on your physiology. Dr. Zara's skin flickered with patterns of scientific enthusiasm. We're establishing a new facility, the Interspecies Harmony Institute, dedicated to this research. You two will be our primary subjects. Douglas and Juno exchanged glances, their newly heightened connection allowing them to sense each other's mix of apprehension and curiosity. What exactly will this research entail? Douglas asked, his bioluminescent skin pulsing slightly with his nervousness. General Kraz stepped forward, his posture rigid. Rest assured, Dr. Holmes, your safety is our top priority. We've implemented stringent security measures to protect you and the facility from any external threats. As the days passed, Douglas and Juno found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The Interspecies Harmony Institute quickly took shape, a gleaming structure of advanced alloys and cutting-edge technology. Teams of human and Adosian scientists worked side by side, their combined expertise focused on unraveling the mysteries of xenoharmonin. Dr. Zara led the research efforts, her skin constantly flickering with patterns of intense concentration as she pored over test results. The protein complex continues to modify your physiologies, she explained during one examination. Douglas, your bioluminescent capabilities are expanding, and Juno, your skin is becoming more resilient and adaptable. As the scientists conducted their tests, Douglas and Juno found their bond deepening in unexpected ways. Their hybrid physiology created a unique form of intimacy, blending human and Adosian mating behaviors. During one particularly intense moment, Douglas found himself instinctively generating complex bioluminescent patterns that resonated with Juno's electromagnetic field. "This is incredible," Juno whispered, her skin pulsing in response. "I can feel your emotions, your very essence." The research team, initially focused solely on the physical aspects of their transformation, quickly realized they needed to expand their study. Dr. Zara brought in specialists in xenopsychology to examine the psychological and emotional implications of their evolving relationship. Outside the institute, public opinion began to shift. The interstellar cooperatives organized demonstrations showcasing the potential benefits of xenoharmonin. In one such event, a team of human and Adosian doctors unveiled a prototype medical device that utilized the protein complex to accelerate healing. "Imagine a future where our species work together to cure diseases once thought untreatable," the lead researcher announced to an awestruck crowd. However, not everyone was convinced. Vex and his supremacist group intensified their opposition, launching a series of cyber attacks against the institute. General Kraz responded by implementing advanced AI-driven security systems and increasing the military presence around the facility. As Douglas and Juno's bodies continued to evolve, they discovered new abilities that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. During one test, Douglas found he could generate weak electromagnetic fields, while Juno demonstrated an enhanced ability to regulate her body temperature in extreme environments. These adaptations could revolutionize space exploration, Dr. Zara exclaimed, her skin flashing with excitement. "You might be able to survive in environments that would be lethal to unmodified humans or Adosians." The implications of their research began to spread beyond Earth and Eidos. Representatives from other alien species arrived, offering advanced technologies and resources in exchange for participation in the xenoharmonin project. As Douglas watched a delegation of tentacled beings tour the facility, he turned to Juno. "I never imagined we'd be at the center of something this big," he said, his skin pulsing with a mix of awe and trepidation. Juno's patterns shifted in response, conveying understanding and shared amazement. "We're not just scientists anymore, Douglas. We're the key to a whole new era of interspecies cooperation." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Chen, accompanied by a team of elite human scientists and diplomats. "The situation is evolving rapidly," she explained. "Earth has sent additional support to help navigate the complex politics surrounding the project." As the newcomers were briefed on the latest developments, Douglas and Juno retreated to their private quarters. They stood before a large window, gazing out at the bustling activity surrounding the institute. Their bodies, now a unique blend of human and Adosian traits, pulsed with shared energy. "Whatever happens next," Douglas said softly, his fingers intertwining with Juno's, "we're in this together." Juno's skin flickered in agreement, her hybrid physiology resonating with his. As they stood there, symbols of a potential future where the boundaries between species blurred, the Interspecies Harmony Institute hummed with activity, its labs and corridors alive with the promise of discoveries that could reshape the galaxy. As Douglas and Juno stood by the window, their intertwined hands pulsing with shared energy, Dr. Zara burst into their quarters, her skin flashing with intense patterns of excitement. "You need to come to the lab immediately," she said, her voice trembling with almost unchecked enthusiasm. "We've made a breakthrough." In the main laboratory, a team of human and Adoshan scientists huddled around a holographic display, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of data streams. As Douglas and Juno approached, Dr. Zara gestured to a series of complex molecular diagrams. "We've discovered something extraordinary about your physiology," she explained, her skin rippling with scientific fervor. "Your bodies are exhibiting enhanced regenerative capabilities. The rate at which you heal from injuries has accelerated dramatically." To demonstrate, Dr. Zara pressed a small device against Douglas's arm, creating a minor abrasion. Before their eyes, the wound began to close, new skin forming at an astonishing rate. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Chen remarked, her eyes wide with amazement. "The medical applications alone could revolutionize healthcare across multiple species." As the days passed, Dr. Zara intensified her studies on the potential medical applications of xenoharmonin. The lab buzzed with activity as researchers worked tirelessly to unravel the mysteries of Douglas and Juno's evolving physiology. Meanwhile, news of their enhanced regenerative abilities spread quickly, reaching the highest levels of Adoshan government. The Adoshan High Council, under mounting pressure from various factions, convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of these latest developments. After hours of heated debate, the council reached a decision. General Kraz, accompanied by a delegation of high-ranking officials, arrived at the Interspecies Harmony Institute to deliver the news. "The High Council has approved a controlled expansion of the Human Adoshan Integration Program," he announced, his posture rigid but his skin patterns betraying a mix of apprehension and hope. "A limited number of volunteer pairs will be selected to undergo a modified version of the xenoharmonin treatment." The announcement sent shockwaves through the institute. Scientists scrambled to prepare protocols for the expanded program, while security personnel began fortifying the facility in anticipation of increased public interest and potential threats. Ambassador Chen, recognizing the delicate nature of the situation, immediately began working with the Adoshan government to establish strict guidelines and ethical protocols for the program. She spent long hours in video conferences with Earth's government, carefully selecting suitable human volunteers with strong diplomatic skills and scientific backgrounds. As preparations for the expanded program got underway, Douglas and Juno found their relationship evolving in unexpected ways. Their unique physiology had unlocked a new form of communication, blending bioluminescent patterns and pheromones to create an intimate bond that transcended traditional species boundaries. One evening, as they sat together in the Institute's arboretum, surrounded by a mix of earth and Adoshan flora, Douglas felt a sudden surge of emotion from Juno. Without a word spoken, he understood her complex feelings, a mix of excitement, fear, and deep affection. "I know," he said softly, his skin pulsing in response. "I feel it too." Dr. Zara and her team, fascinated by this development, began studying the implications of this new form of interspecies communication. They theorized that it could lead to breakthroughs in fields ranging from linguistics to neuroscience. As the first wave of volunteer pairs began their treatment, the Adoshan homeworld buzzed with a mix of excitement and controversy. The interstellar cooperatives organized public demonstrations, showcasing the potential benefits of xenoharmonin technology. In one such event, a team of human and Adoshan engineers unveiled a prototype environmental adaptation suit that incorporated principles observed in Douglas and Juno's hybrid physiology. However, not everyone welcomed these advancements. Vex's supremacist group staged increasingly violent protests, targeting facilities associated with the Interspecies Harmony Institute and human Adoshan collaboration projects. In response, General Kraz implemented stricter security measures, deploying advanced AI-driven defense systems around key installations. As tensions rose, Douglas and Juno found themselves thrust into the spotlight. Their every public appearance drew intense scrutiny from both supporters and opponents of the program. They had become living symbols of human-Edosian collaboration, their hybrid bodies embodying the potential and the controversy of interspecies integration. One afternoon, as they assisted Dr. Zara in developing a new generation of spacecraft capable of withstanding extreme environmental conditions, an alert sounded throughout the Institute. General Kraz's voice came over the communication system, his tone urgent. "We've detected unauthorized activity in the outer perimeter," he announced. "All personnel are to report to their designated safe zones immediately." As alarms blared and security forces mobilized, Douglas and Juno exchanged a look of concern. Their enhanced senses picked up a surge of electromagnetic activity outside the facility. Whatever was happening, it was clear that their work had attracted unwanted attention. As they hurried to a secure area, following the Institute's emergency protocols, Douglas couldn't help but wonder what new challenges lay ahead. Their journey of transformation had opened up incredible possibilities, but it had also placed them at the center of a storm that threatened to reshape the future of human-Edosian relations, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As they reached the secure area, Douglas and Juno's enhanced senses detected a shift in the electromagnetic field surrounding the Institute. The air crackled with tension as security forces mobilized to counter the threat. General Kraz's voice boomed over the intercom once more. "All personnel, remain calm. We have the situation under control." Despite the reassurance, Douglas and Juno exchanged worried glances. Their unique bond, forged through shared experiences and physiological changes, allowed them to communicate without words. They both knew that this attack was just the beginning of a greater challenge. As the security breach was contained, life at the Interspecies Harmony Institute gradually returned to normal. However, the incident had sparked a renewed focus on the potential of human-Edosian integration. Dr. Zara and her team redoubled their efforts, pushing the boundaries of their research. Weeks turned into months, and Douglas and Juno's relationship continued to evolve. Their unique physiology had created an intimacy that transcended traditional species boundaries. One evening, as they sat in the Institute's observation dome, watching the twin moons of Edos rise, Juno felt a strange flutter in her abdomen. "Douglas," she whispered, her skin pulsing with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. I think something's happening." Concerned, they immediately sought out Dr. Zara. After a series of tests, the Edosian scientist's skin flashed with patterns of astonishment and joy. "This is unprecedented," she exclaimed. "Your hybrid physiology has stabilized in a way we never anticipated. You're fertile." The news sent shockwaves through the Institute. Dr. Zara and her team worked tirelessly to understand the implications of this new hybrid fertility. As word spread, the Edosian High Council convened an emergency session to address the potential long-term consequences. Meanwhile, Douglas and Juno grappled with the enormity of their situation. They spent long hours discussing the possibility of having a child, weighing the personal and societal implications. "This could change everything," Douglas said, his skin pulsing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Are we ready for this?" Juno's patterns shifted, conveying perseverance and love. "I think we are. We've come this far together. Why stop now?" Their decision to try for a child coincided with a major breakthrough in General Kraz's covert operation. After months of searching, his team finally located Dr. Nix's secret facility. In a tense confrontation, they discovered that Nix had created a small group of genetically modified Edosians with enhanced abilities. As Kraz's forces stormed the facility, chaos erupted. Several of Nix's subjects managed to escape, prompting a planet-wide manhunt. The news of these super-Edosians added fuel to the already heated debates surrounding human-Edosian integration. Amidst this turmoil, Douglas and Juno made their announcement. Their intention to have a child polarized Edosian society. Supporters hailed it as the dawn of a new era, while opponents viewed it as a threat to Edosian purity. Vex's supremacist group seeing this as their last chance to prevent what they saw as the contamination of their species, launched a final desperate attack on the Interspecies Harmony Institute. Their goal was clear: prevent the birth of the first human Adosian hybrid child at all costs. As alarms blared and security forces mobilized, Douglas and Juno found themselves at the heart of the conflict. Their years of integration had honed their unique abilities, and now they stood ready to defend not just themselves, but the future they represented. Douglas's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with intensity as he coordinated with the security teams. Juno's enhanced electromagnetic sensing allowed her to track the movements of the attackers. Together, they formed a formidable defense. The battle raged through the Institute's corridors. Human and Adosian allies fought side by side, their complementary abilities proving crucial in repelling the attack. Dr. Zara used her scientific knowledge to improvise defenses, while General Kraz's military expertise guided their strategy. As the conflict reached its peak, Douglas found himself face-to-face with Vex. The supremacist leader's eyes burned with hatred, his skin flashing patterns of disgust and anger. "You're an abomination," Vex snarled. "You and your kind will destroy everything that makes us Edosian." Instead of responding with violence, Douglas did something unexpected. He began to emit complex bioluminescent patterns, using the communication skills he had developed through his integration with Juno. The patterns spoke of unity, of the strength found in diversity, of the potential for growth and evolution. Vex's followers, many of whom had never experienced such direct emotional communication, found themselves transfixed. Douglas's patterns exposed the flaws in their ideology, showing them a vision of a future where differences were celebrated, not feared. One by one, Vex's supporters began to lower their weapons. The supremacist leader, realizing he had lost his power, made a final desperate lunge at Douglas. But Juno, her reflexes enhanced by her hybrid physiology, intercepted him, subduing Vex with a precise electromagnetic pulse. As the dust settled, the Adosian public witnessed the courage and unity displayed by the integrated couples. This turning point in public opinion led to widespread acceptance of human-Adosian collaboration. Vex and his remaining loyal followers were arrested, marking the end of organized opposition to the integration program. In the aftermath of the attack, Douglas and Juno stood together in the Institute's medical bay, surrounded by their allies. Dr. Zara approached them, her skin pulsing with excitement. "We've completed the latest round of tests," she announced. "Everything looks perfect. You're officially expecting twins." The news was met with cheers and congratulations. As Douglas and Juno embraced, their skin patterns synchronizing in a display of joy and love, they knew that their journey was far from finished. The birth of their children would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not just for them, but for the entire galaxy.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.